This video is titled I'm Quitting Destiny After 10 Years, and it has become trending within the Destiny 2 category, so I figured we would watch and review it together. Let's jump right into it.
Before the video starts, I want to give a massive thank you to everyone who saw the last video. I can't believe the support you guys left on that. I still read through the comments, so if you guys are still commenting on it, I am keeping up with it. I am curious on what your thoughts are on the DLC. But anyways, thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Now, I want to preface that I absolutely love this game. This is the only game that has consistently had me coming back for 10 years straight, and it's the only game that's ever managed to do that. But I think we can all admit that Destiny just isn't what it used to be. I'm not one of those guys that's just going to sit here and say, well, actually, I've been around since the D1 beta, because I just haven't. I started playing Destiny towards the end of 2015 into the beginning of 2016, between the launch of Taken King and Rise of Iron, and the only reason I ever got into the game was because my dad had already been playing for around a year. So it's safe to say I've been playing this game for a long time now, and I wanted to just talk about the unfortunate state the game is in and why I don't think I'll be returning in the future. After the Final Shape concluded the Light and Darkness saga, I feel like that was where the conclusion of the game should have been. However, instead of pouring their hard-earned cash from the £80 DLCs, constant microtransactions, and the Bungie store items shoved down our throats, I'm looking at you, raid pins. Instead of using that to make Destiny 3, we got Marathon. That might not even release due to all the stolen artwork controversy, which I'm not going to discuss here. But as I was saying, this was a clear and happy endpoint for everyone, and a beautiful conclusion to an incredible 10-year journey. However,
And to be fair, though, the idea of a Destiny 3 is built upon the premise of a box service game. So basically, like Call of Duty, right? It always has like a new game every year. Actually, I haven't really been keeping up with Call of Duty, so maybe they're not doing that anymore. But for a long time, that's what they did. And that's Call of Duty's box service model. But when Destiny 2 adopted the live service game, they decided to keep the game going in perpetuity. So that's why we got Forsaken, which really saved the game after D2 Year 1's launch. And every year thereafter, we just continued to get new additions to this game. And that's the live service model. But Destiny 3 would be kind of breaking that and going back to the box service style, which has positives. Don't get me wrong, a bunch of new stuff would be very positive, but it also has some overwhelming negatives, meaning you're going to lose all the loot that you've invested in. You're going to lose all these cosmetics that everyone loves, talking about. We always like to roast Bungie for all their Eververse cosmetics, but how much more painful would it be if you've invested hundreds of dollars, let's say, into all these cosmetics and expansions, and all of it is immediately meaningless because Destiny 3 is out now, right? It would be even more frustrating, potentially.
they decided to continue the Destiny universe and start a brand new multi-year saga. Yes, I did say multi-year saga. This left a lot of people umming and ahhing about whether this was something that the people wanted or not, which the majority of people by this point already wanted Destiny 3. Roll around to July 15th, 2025, and oh boy, the Edge of Fate had dropped, and it was lackluster, to say the least. I won't go over my personal thoughts, as I have a whole video dedicated to that in the description if you want to see that. But now I'll get on to why I am personally quitting Destiny. This game has completely run out of content for me to play. I have been continuously logging on and floating in orbit for about 10 minutes before I inevitably give up and jump off again. There is nothing this game is offering me right now that has me excited to jump on. Yes, you could argue, well, we have a new raid, we can farm for those new weapons. Correct, you're right, we do have a new raid. But also, if I want to get tier 5 weapons for this raid, I have to clear it 25 times to claim a triumph that awards this kind of loot, which is just something I really don't want to do anymore. I thought that the higher tiered weapons and armor would be a really good change, and a change the game needed. However, after playing around 20 hours of the new DLC, I have had zero effort to grind any of this gear at all. The grind feels too long.
And to be fair, he does have an excellent argument here where the grind is maybe a little bit too long, and how many hours that are required or needed to be invested to get that tier 5 loot it's pretty high up there. Let's be real, it's pretty high up there. But it should also be said that it's not an absolute necessity that you get that tier 5 weapon. I think we've become way too accustomed to getting the absolute best loot. We've been nitpicky over people having the exact 5 out of 5 god roll. We've been roasting people when they have the 4 out of 5 god roll because the barrel is a little bit off for the past many, many years in Destiny 2. But we shouldn't necessarily need it to be that far. Like if you had a tier 4 god roll of the new raid rocket, for example, That is an excellent weapon. That is going to do a lot of good for you, especially when a rocket would be a necessity for a boss encounter. So I don't think that we should discredit the tier 4s, the tier 3s, the tier 2s, or even the tier 1s, because a god roll is still going to be really powerful and a really good weapon to have. The armor, obviously, even more interesting with the armor because you do get higher stats, which makes your build significantly better. So you're really going to want at least probably at least tier 3 armor, a full set head to toe. And that's definitely obtainable by even the most casual player with the most casual experience. But for sure, if you're a hardcore player, you're going to want all tier 5. If you're a hardcore PvP player, you're going to want tier 5. If you're a hardcore PvE player, the same. But again, that's all mostly applies if you're trying to clear contest raids and stuff. Other than that, do you need a full set of tier 5 armor and all tier 5 weapons to go in and clear a dungeon on regular difficulty? Absolutely not.
And way too strenuous. This is coming from a guy who's full-time employed and has pretty much zero time to play during the week. But when I do decide to play, the last thing I want to be doing is logging on to grind the same content I've been grinding for the past 4 or 5 years. We have gone from having 2 raids and 2 dungeons per year to 1 raid and 1 dungeon per year, which doesn't sound like a major difference, but it really is. We've gone from...
That is actually a big difference, and I'm glad that he highlights that because I think that Bungie is trying to convince us that less is more, and we're not really believing it, right? We're definitely not believing it. But to be fair, they're also trying to adjust where even though we're getting less, there's meant to be more depth to those activities. So to play devil's advocate for a minute, it's meant to be that you get 1 raid and 1 dungeon, but we're also getting the epic version of that raid, right? And so these things are meant to have, ideally, a higher degree of replayability because while it is so much fun to get so much new content, and in a dream world, we could get 1 new raid a month, every month, right? Imagine if every month you got a new raid and then the next month a new dungeon, new raid, new dungeon, new raid, new dungeon, 6 raids a year, 6 dungeons a year. That would be awesome, but Bungie would never be able to produce that without a team of 10,000 employees or something just completely unobtainable for them, right? So it's just not possible for them to do that. So instead, what they need to do in their mind is, especially after all the recent layoffs and stuff, they need to take the content that they are producing and add a higher degree of replayability for it. So basically make it so that way you can replay the dungeon or the raid, or even in this case, old exotic missions, right? Kel's Fall is what he's in right now. And have there be enough variance in the enemy types. Sometimes there's dread, sometimes it's taken, sometimes it's, it changes for each encounter. Sometimes the objectives are different, right? And you can change the modifiers yourself. So you could have a grappler on or something, or you can have on a different surge and stuff. So that way you can play the same activities, but it feels different from each instance to each instance. So that way investing more time doesn't feel quite as monotonous, quite as tiring, and it doesn't fatigue you as much. That's their goal, right? Are they achieving that goal? Well, only time will tell in the long run, but for this individual, for him, it's not achieving that goal.
Splitting the year into quarterly content drops to 1 every 6 months, which unfortunately isn't enough for me to keep playing. And I'm sorry if that sounds selfish and greedy, but it's the truth. There isn't enough content being dropped anymore to satisfy me as a player.
That's such an interesting paradox that he's created. So he's saying that he has a job, he's busy Monday through Friday, he can only play on the weekend, so he doesn't have very much time to play. But even still, for him, there's not enough content for him to play, which is, I'm not calling this guy out by any means, but I'm just like, this guy definitely ain't 450 power. Let's be real. If you work in that 9 to 5 job Monday through Friday, you ain't 450 power, right? Did you clear the raid in contest mode? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Have you cleared the raid since to try and, get the higher tiered rewards or even any of the god rolls, unlocking the different weapons? I'm doubting it, So it's like, I feel like you might just be burnt out on Destiny 2 and you might just be projecting your frustrations, maybe not necessarily the absolute truth of Destiny 2's frustrations, because I don't think that anyone's really ran out of anything to do just yet. There's so much, even though it might be really repetitive, just grinding your power level, doing 1,000 encores or Kel's Fall. Nobody's ran out of anything to do just yet. Even the people who are haven't even showered since July 15th or haven't run out of stuff to do yet.
Said that may sound selfish and greedy, but it is just the truth. Seasons have been retired. We've now gone from 1 big expansion a year to 2 smaller sized expansions a year, with a single major update a couple months after the initial release of the expansion. Don't get me wrong, I was bored of the seasons formula a long time ago, but this new formula is just not working for me. And yes, I know I'm being a little bit preemptive when it comes to this opinion because we haven't had the second expansion drop yet. However, I just don't think this is going to be something I enjoy. I remember us launching into Forsaken the day it dropped and being overwhelmed by how many exotics had been added during the update. We had well over 20 exotic weapons and 15 exotic armor pieces, which is 5 per character. You want to know how many we got in the Edge of Fate? We got 3 weapons, 1 being the raid weapon, and 3 armor pieces, 1 per class. Now I know it's unfair to compare the 2 expansions due to Destiny 2 still being pretty fresh and bare bones going into Forsaken, but to have an expansion you pay £40 for and to get the bare minimum of content is just diabolical and almost inexcusable. I'm going to
So to speak on that moment just a little bit on that topic, I am on the same page in regards to I always want more in Destiny 2. I always want more exotics. But it should also be said that that formula can get a little bit repetitive in and of itself too. You can always just add more exotics. Like right now we have so many exotics that most of you out there, you don't even use half of them. Let's be honest. Like, what class do you play? Titan, Hunter, Warlock? Have you in the last 2 weeks used, 20 different exotic armor pieces? Like, probably not, right? Like, there's just such a plethora of existing armor pieces that we almost, I'm not going to say we don't need new exotics, but like we have so many already that if we took the exotics that we have existing and did what Bungie's doing and we buffed them and enhanced them and gave them, more modern character traits and perks and abilities, that they would fit in the current ecosystem better, right? We should take existing exotics and enhance them and make them better. We don't necessarily need to have, in our collections, our exotic collections, like 500 exotics with us only actually using 5 of them, right? That's not necessarily a better outcome. The better outcome is to have more meaningful exotics and make the exotics that currently exist in the game extremely meaningful as well. And so what Bungie has done with Edge of Fate is they've enhanced the quality of life features with the replayability with the portal and made it so that way you can grind a lot more if you want to grind a lot more and get better loot for doing so rather than just grind for no reason, right? Like if there was no reason to get up to maximum power, then people would be like, they would already be logging off. They wouldn't be even trying to get up to that 450 level. But there is a reason, the higher tiered loot. So I do agree. I always want more exotics. I reminisce back on the days of the Taken King when we got so many new. But we're also in a new era. We're in a new time. We're in a whole new movement with Destiny 2. And that movement is about making what we currently have existing as high quality as possible. And I actually agree with Bungie in that regard, because throwing 10 new exotics at us right now and only 3 or 4 of them being good does not sound nearly as interesting as making the current existing exotics better and making the systems in the game better, in my opinion, though.
talk about the enemy variety in the game now. I can't tell you how bored I am of fighting the same shit all the time. I get it. We've been playing the game for a very long time now, and of course, we're gonna get bored of the same enemy races over and over again. But for me, it's just got to the point of where can the game go from here. When they added the new race, the Dread, during the final shape, I thought this was great. I thought it would be the mix-up we needed to keep the game fresh, but unfortunately it just wasn't the case. They just became the most annoying race of enemies we had ever fought, with Strand Scions pulling you towards them all the time, and then you have Husks charging at you, meleeing you to death in like 3 hits. And don't even get me started on those god-forsaken bats. Despite all of Bungie's efforts to keep the game afloat and keep it standing on its own 2 legs, the longer the game goes on, the more it's going to struggle. The aim for Bungie is to keep all of...
So to talk on that point in regards to the enemies, so he kind of had 2 different arguments that he bounced between there. The first one was that he's kind of exhausted with fighting the same enemies, which I strongly agree with. I think that, we decided to leave Earth, or to go to the very edge of our solar system, right? We're at Kepler now, and at Kepler there just so happens to be more Fallen, and they're of course a variant of Fallen, which I do find to be interesting, but fighting the same enemy once again feels a little bit exhausting. So that I wish that we could have more new introductions to enemy races. But I think that a point that he brings up that he almost like negates his first point is because then he says, well, Bungie did introduce a new race and it's called the Dread, and I absolutely hate them, you know? And so it's like Bungie can't win in that situation. Either you get the old stuff, you know, revamped, like we're getting a new version of the Fallen, and we also know that we're getting a new version of the Cabal in Renegades, which I'm sure, you know, veteran Destiny players will have vocal opinions about. And so we know what Renegades is going to have, a revamped version of the Cabal, and or you get the new enemy race, and then everyone's just like, we hate it. We hate what the new enemy race does. They're annoying and stuff like that. And of course, you know, no one wants enemies that are annoying necessarily, or you know, apply status effects on you like slowing and you know all the stuff that the Dread do, slowing you down and tinnitus. My gosh, I'm sick and tired of tinnitus. But that's kind of where new enemies have to go. Like if you just created new enemies and they did the same thing as the old enemies, then people would criticize you heavily for that. So Bungie's in kind of a catch-22 situation when it comes to enemies. I really wish that they were a little more creative, though, a little more innovative, and we could introduce new aliens into the ecosystem. However, I know that it's a complex problem because as you introduce the new alien race, you also have to incorporate lots of other stuff with that. I'm sure it's extremely difficult in terms of developmental effort, and I don't know how much it necessarily moves the needle. Like, does Edge of Fate launching with a whole new enemy race to fight really move the needle heavily and make everyone really want to buy the expansion all of a sudden? I don't know if it necessarily sells as much as people perceive it to. It can also be difficult when you have to incorporate all of this into like the lore. You know, obviously when we leave the solar system, we'll have to be fighting some new enemies at that point, right? Like once we've actually left Sol, then surely we'll be fighting some new stuff. It would be really weird if we left Sol and then it was the same enemies. So that should be on the horizon, some new enemy races. Hopefully the new ones deliver in a way that was bigger than the Dread, because I think a lot of people have had mixed opinions about the Dread. They've kind of disliked what they do to us. So maybe Bungie can read that feedback and make the next enemy race a little bit less annoying. They did also technically introduce some new variants of Vex, like we have the Imps now. And myself personally, I think the Imps are fucking awesome, dude. These guys, they look absolutely evil and menacing, and they're just floating around, and they're looming over you, and you shoot them, and then all the little miniature imps just start swarming after you and trying to kill you. Like, obviously, I don't want enemies trying to kill me when I'm trying to complete my contest raid, but I think they're cool. I think the imps are awesome. I actually really like that introduction. And personally, I didn't hate the Dread as much as the average Destiny 2 player does, but maybe that's my personal opinion, and maybe that's not your opinion. Feel free to let me know what you think about the Dread. What do you think about the imps? What do you think about the Elixni in Kepler?
Us playing for as long as humanly possible, retaining the playtime, player numbers, and players' retention. But with the activities that are currently in the game and the way power leveling is such a chore to do, it's pretty hard for people to keep grinding. I thought the change to the new leveling system was great, I really did, but over time it's just proven to be worse than I initially thought it to be. Someone over on Twitter has just hit 450 power this morning, the power cap, and now they have nothing to do. What are they going to do? Farm tier 5 gear that they probably already have, farm weapons for roles that they probably already have. There is just nothing.
What they're going to do if they just hit 450 is they're going to take a shower and then go outside and touch some grass and then maybe go to the gym, because if you have hit 450 power after 2 weeks, you have played the game for about 15 hours a day, 14 consecutive days in a row, and that's a lot, right? It's time for you to go outside. And if you have nothing left to do for a period of time because there's nothing in the game, then that's okay. But we should also understand that that's a really unhealthy play style, right? We can't make a game for people that are unemployed final bosses, right? If you can play the game for 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you apparently have no bills, you have no relationships, you have no responsibilities, that's great on you. But Destiny 2 cannot cater to you, Mr. playing 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even I'm a content creator and I can't play that much, right? I got to make content in the meantime. I'm watching videos, we're making guides, we're playing through things. Even I am not able to play that much. So we can definitely not cater to that 0.00001% players. And if they do run out of stuff for a period of time, that's fine. Now Arms Week is here. So now the sweaty of the sweaties that have lived online for the last 2 weeks now have the ability to grind out their hand cannons till they get the god roll. So there you have something to do. And guess what? After Arms Week is done, there will probably be something else to do in some small capacity, and so on and so forth, week after week. That's kind of the new cadence of Destiny 2, is that there's always going to be something around the corner. Is it going to be enough to satisfy and satiate the most Destiny's most deranged, the career the career guardians that live inside the game? Probably not, and that's okay.
Thing for them to grind for now. I don't know, man. It just seems incredibly pointless to go anywhere above 200, especially with the time I have during the week to play the game. The last thing I want to talk about briefly are the contest raid completions and the cheating that went on during this event. I am sick and tired of hearing about cheaters in this game that has an anti-cheat software that clearly doesn't work. This isn't only related to the contest raid either. I have seen clips from streamers and people on Twitter of people flying around in PvP games with infinite heavy and infinite RPMs, just clearing through some of the top players for these players to still have access to their accounts days later. I don't know how this stuff goes under the radar.
Part of the reason why some of the cheating goes under the radar is that because it has to do with net limiting. So it's more about network manipulation, and I don't think it pings Bungie's radars in the exact same way that hard cheating does. Like, I don't know that BattlEye flags the net limiting as easily as hard cheats, because hard cheats is like, it's a file that's in your game and stuff like that. I think that the net limiting somehow can work around it a little bit better. I'm no expert of net limiting, but it would seem as though that has a better workaround, and they're unable to catch the net limiters. So the net limiters are the ones doing a lot of the cheating, especially in that contest raid, and it's just more difficult for Bungie to detect them and ban them.
For so long, I don't know if something has been done about the contest raid cheaters, but if it hasn't, Bungie really needs to start slamming down that ban hammer as soon as possible.
They did announce that they were removing all of the cheaters, and the community third-party websites removed about 400 teams from the top 600. So there's only about less than 200 teams that successfully cleared without cheaters, myself included. Thankfully, I take a lot of pride in clearing that contest now, especially knowing that it was only 200 teams that cleared the damn thing in 48 hours. 400 teams actually cheated, which is pretty crazy. But as far as banning the people that played with cheaters, I don't think Bungie's going to go that far. I kind of wish they would go scorched earth there, but it is what it is.
And I'm not only talking about the people who were doing the carries for the people who they were with. The people who were stupid enough to play with someone blatantly cheating need to be banned too. Again, I don't think this is a rare opinion. I don't think this is a hot take. I think everybody who was a participant during this contest raid who was playing with a cheater needs to be banned. It was around 70% of contest clears were cheated. That is a diabolical number, and the fact that that went under the radar for days and days is just inexcusable. Surely Bungie has the statistics to find out whether these people were cheating or not. Again, I don't know if Bungie have done anything about this already, but if it hasn't been done, it certainly needs to be. Now, I know I probably missed a ton of stuff during this video of reasons why I am stopping playing Destiny, and I do apologize for that. There are probably 1,000 more reasons, but these are the ones that kind of stand out to me. Overall, Destiny for me just isn't what it used to be, and I think I'm okay with that. The truth is, I just don't have the time anymore to pour thousands of hours into a game that clearly has no love going into it. For those of you that still love the game, I am super happy for you guys. I really am. I wish I enjoyed it as much as you do, but that's just how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. With that being said, I may pop back for Renegades later on when that...
They got you back. They said, I'm quitting. I'm never playing again until Renegades. I gotta see that Star Wars DLC.
Launches, as I did already purchase it way back when, but I wouldn't hold out hope if I'm honest. This does mean that I'm going to be veering away from Destiny content, so a lot of you who have viewed my last video and maybe even this one may not see me again, as I'll be uploading totally different content to what is catered to you guys. But either way, I appreciate you guys coming into the videos and all the support you guys have been leaving. It's been a little bit overwhelming because, I mean, 2,000 views isn't a lot for you guys, but for me, like, as a small content creator, that's massive. Like, that's huge. So yeah, thank you guys. I really do appreciate it, and I may or may not see you in some other videos.
So there it is. That was I'm quitting Destiny after 10 years. And my final conclusion, my final thoughts on this are that if you ever need to take time off Destiny, feel free to always do it. I think that too many people get wrapped up in the idea of FOMO and the inability to leave the game for a period of time because coming back is difficult. You feel like you missed out on so much. It's really not a problem. You're going to be fine coming back. You're going to be fine taking some time off. If you aren't vibing with the Edge of Fate, of course, take some time off until Renegades. Along the way, though, I think you might be surprised at all the things that happen. I think that a lot of people kind of are basically judging Edge of Fate based on its first week or first 2 weeks, but it's meant to be a 6-month expansion, right? It's meant to be this like 6-month time period where Bungie is meant to keep us interested, engaged week after week. And I think that Edge of Fate at the end of 6 months will look a whole lot better to players than it does in the first 6 days, if that makes sense, because you'll get to actually look back at everything that we got to do versus kind of like looking at the stuff we have right now, which looks significantly less or diminished. So hopefully I'm right about that prediction, though. I could be wrong. I could be at the end of 6 months and be like, man, Bungie, this was half baked. What were you thinking? This is not going to work. I could easily have a much more pessimistic opinion at the end of 6 months. But as it stands right now, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're heading through an era of Destiny 2 that is still very much a Destiny narrative, still a very much Destiny player experience where you have loot that you can invest your time for. You've got raid loot, you've got loot outside of the raids. You can still obviously play a ton of different PvP if you want to be that type of guy. I've been there before. I don't know. I don't think the Destiny 2 is in the worst place ever in terms of Edge of Fate. I think that the population is definitely lower, and Bungie is going with a whole new strategy. And it's a bold one. It's a bold one. Only time will tell if it does pay off. We've talked a little bit about what that strategy is. I don't want to sit here and recap the same thing 1,000 times over, but the strategy is, from Bungie's point of view, is to make the game for the players that play the game, basically. People that want to play Destiny 2 and invest their time have something to do. And so the Destiny fans, the people that are willing and interesting to grind the game, are not going to run out of too much. You know, now you've got this crazy power grind, and you're going to have these crazy tier 5 drops you're going to chase for, weapons and armor, and then all these little mini events along the way. And then obviously the raid, the epic raid, and everything that goes along with that. Hopefully the strategy does work for them, and they keep the it's kind of like a niche community of people that play this game, right? We want to keep this niche community engaged and playing for a higher number of hours, a higher percentage than what they played prior. Like that's kind of their main goal. They're not really adopting a bunch of new players at this point in time. It's not really new player friendly, and it's only going to get harder to be a new player in Destiny 2 because the systems are just becoming more and more complex, and we can try and make a bunch of simple guides and we can make a million little explanations on the screen, but in the end it's not as simple as it used to be where you just load in the game and shoot your gun and that's it. You know, it's just now you got all these stats, all these armors, all these exotics, all these abilities, aspects, subclasses, 3 different classes, crazy movement, you name it. There's a lot going on, right? And that's a good thing, especially for people that like Destiny 2. And it's a tough thing for new players to get in. So Bungie is, instead of doing what they did with Destiny 2 when it launched and they tried to make it like easier and more streamlined, they're going the other direction. They're making it more complex. Let me know what you think about the video down in the comment section below, though. And that's wrap. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.